rmworldtravel.com is your place for show archives, travel news, sponsor links, and so much more. You can also connect with Robert and Mary and the RM World Travel Show team. Now, back to America's #1 travel radio show.
#1 indeed. And as we get back to it, everyone, with that zippy bumper music, we are headed straight into today's personal connection that's sponsored by travelguard.com/Carrie.
Because world happenings, unknown situations, and other situations could compromise your plans, whether your next adventure is a long or short getaway, international or domestic. We recommend you get protected with travelguard.com/Carrie.
We absolutely do. Packing a Travel Guard travel insurance plan is one of the best things you can do for successful travel. It safeguards you against many unknowns that could create issues, including passport or ticket replacement, medical expenses and evacuation, trip cancellations, interruptions and delays, lost or delayed baggage, translation services, prescription replacement. You might have work-related cancellations. Whatever it is, roadside assistance, right? Whatever it is, you're going to have someone available to you 24/7 and a lot more. Get the coverage you should have at travelguard.com/Carrie before you travel, or find a link at rmworldtravel.com under sponsors.
Okay, this should be a fun segment. Best-selling author and former TV director Niamh McAnally is the youngest daughter of the late BAFTA award-winning Irish actor Ray McAnally and actress Ronnie Masterson. She grew up in a theatrical family where the family quote was, "Never a dull moment." And her travels over her lifetime are certainly anything but dull. She's here now for our personal connection.
Well, let's do it, Mary. Welcome to America's #1 travel radio show, Niamh.
Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Well, we really appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time on this Saturday morning. So, we were deciding during the break where to begin. I'm going to take us down this path. So you have enjoyed several careers across several industries, including time spent within the hotel sector on Sark in the English Channel Isles. Mary and I, we certainly have enjoyed our time on Guernsey. They're both interesting islands. But where I want to go with this, you're a writer at heart, and you call yourself a child of the ocean and the writer on the water. So I want you to share with us what it is about the sea that has continued to influence both your travels and your path in life.
Yeah, the sea very much drives me. And I grew up actually on Dublin Bay, and I was able to see the sea from my window. And I remember this kind of ebb and flow of the tides. And to me, it was almost like, another chance, another way to start again. And so I really love being around the water and on the water. It's definitely my happy place.
Niamh, we had to start there because your memoir that just came out is called Following the Sunshine. Very catchy title. It includes many of your adventures in the South Pacific, the Caribbean, Florida, and the Keys, elsewhere. Lots of islands, big island theme. You went from teaching scuba diving in the Keys in Florida to a grand adventure in Fiji. You began some of your global volunteer efforts after that. Curious to hear and have you share what prompted your urge to merge your travels with your volunteer efforts.
That actually started in my teenage years. When I left school, the equivalent of high school in Ireland, I went to Paris, France for a year to study French language and literature. And I worked as a jeune fille au pair, which is like a live-in nanny in the home. And that gave me that sense of, I like to travel now as a traveler and live in the community, because I think then you get a much better understanding of the people and the traditions and the cultures. And for those reasons, I kind of decided that I was always going to try and do some volunteer work wherever I traveled.
And what was it about the South Pacific that drew you?
Well, what's not to love?
What's not to love, yeah.
We could do the whole hour on that. We agree on that, right?
I know. Well, I am particularly attracted to small islands. Like you mentioned, I lived on Sark, which was like 3.5 miles long by 1.5 miles wide, with no cars and no airport, only accessible by ferry. So there's something, mystical or magical about that for me. And if you add in now the beautiful, warm, azure waters of islands in the South Pacific, you've got yourself a winner.
Yeah, 100% agree. So you had several experiences. I don't want to give it all away when you were in Tonga and in the South Pacific. There was a story about a turtle. And the reason I'd love you to share this with our listeners is I think it's a great example of how travel can alter our sort of preconceived beliefs that maybe we think are right because it's something we grew up with in our culture. So just share a little bit about that story.
Yes, on the island I was on in Tonga was a little island called Namuka, and it was still traditional for the families to hunt and fish, and they would catch turtles from time to time, and they would eat them, and they have a Sunday major feast which is called the Umu. And I was living with this family who were originally from Australia but had created this swim with the whale business on the catamaran in the Kingdom of Tonga. And while we were on the island, we discovered that one of the local fishermen had caught a turtle. And Tris, who was my host mother, had been trained in turtle conservation and not catch and release, but, they were able to tag them. Mm-hmm. And she went to see the lady and said to her, turtles are endangered. Would you mind, we could take the turtle back and release it? And the woman said to her, well, that's all very well and fine, but I got to feed my family, and this is what we eat. And in the end, the lady did give up the turtle, and she chose one of the local chickens instead for that Sunday. But what it gave me an impression was, the rest of us probably would be struck in horror that, oh my God, what do you mean you're going to eat a turtle? Mm-hmm. And yet, I started to think about it. We eat, beef and cows let's say in America, you throw them on the barbecue, and yet it's a sacred animal in places like India. Right. Similarly, we ride horses in Ireland, and yet they eat them in France. So what it opened my mind to is, who's to say what's right or wrong? Just because you're brought up in one tradition doesn't mean it's the only way, and doesn't necessarily mean you're correct.
Well, that's the part of travel. I mean, you go there and it widens you and it broadens you, because you realize, all right, you know what? There are different ways to do things. And to your point, who says it's right or wrong?
Right.
Yeah, so I want to move us into this direction, because, we had our producers book you for this personal connection segment today, because it is where we talk about how travel transforms and helps you grow, the impact that travel has. You have 5 habits that you think make good sense for people to adopt when traveling. We like them: curiosity, adaptability, minimalism, open-mindedness, and gratitude. Now, I might add discipline to that list, but, adaptability or flexibility is one, we talk about on the show. The importance of having a plan B or C in place and be ready to make a shift if something goes off plan. So, what about the other 4 do you think is most critical?
I think curiosity, and I think if you have curiosity and couple in with gratitude, obviously, that really does open your mind and put you into that state of open-mindedness when you do travel and you encounter something that's not like something you're used to. I think that really opens it up. And like you said, adaptability, things do go wrong from time to time. My approach to that is I stop first and think, okay, what's the gift in this? What else is going to happen because this has changed, or, the flight's delayed or something like that? And then I would travel with minimalism, because the lighter you travel, the further you go. It's a lot easier.
Agree. The theme of curiosity really travels through in your memoir. And when I want to go back to Fiji for a minute, you wrote about a very challenging re-entry when you came back from Fiji that I also thought was interesting and resonated with me. You have an opinion on returning from large, kind of meaningful, long-term trips that maybe you've grown from, and you want to come home and, obviously you have to decompress and re-enter, but friends and family don't always connect to our travels and our experiences. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a difficult time. I mean, I kind of call it, in these instances, I call it reverse culture shock. You're coming back from maybe an island in Fiji where people to me, seem to be intrinsically happy. And in that particular case, I ended up driving on a freeway in LA, and I looked around at people who were monetarily so much better off financially that, but they were still grumpy. And I was like, people in Fiji were happy and laughing at everything and laughing at nothing, and they were making like a fraction of the money a day. So that was hard. But then, like you said, with families and friends, the thing is, yes, you've grown through this experience, and the danger is that you look at everybody else and think, well, what have you been doing while I've been gone for a few months traveling the world? You're stuck and you're still in the same place. And so we have to be open-minded to that maybe they are going through their own processes of development or personal growth. And it doesn't necessarily mean just because they didn't live home, they didn't grow in their own way. And I think we have to be mindful of that when we come back. But it is hard, and this is where I think people get even vacation blues when they come home. It's like they're back into the land of reality. And for me, what I always do is try and, plan another trip before I come back.
Well, that goes back to what you said earlier, by the way, gratitude. Be appreciative of what you have and what you've done. So really quick, we've only have about 40 seconds. You mentioned, happy place. And since, you enjoy being on the water, Mary and I 100% identify with that. Is there a particular body of water or ocean in the world that you most connect with?
The water in the Bahamas when we were sailing, and Bora Bora in the lagoons were just amazing.
Yeah, it's just the water. For Miriam, actually, we're taking the show. Also, the Hawaiian waters are very meaningful and so forth to us. But again, it's just the islands and.
But honestly, you're in. I like the Keys.
Yeah. Well, folks, exactly. The Keys also.
Yeah.
So, folks, if you want to right now connect with